Man, this Vandy team will be a lot of fun to watch. By the way, they took care of business 55-0.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB and to receive 20% off of your order. So Vandy thrashes Alcorn State 55-0. They take care of business. Lots to take away here. The crowd. I was really impressed with the crowd. They created a good atmosphere. They really responded well. 7 Commodores scored touchdowns. So this thing was a total team effort. They even had a punt return touchdown. So special teams got in on the action. The defense and run game were on point. But all in all, man, this team, for a lot of reasons, is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So, I think when you kind of look at it, let's look at the game recap. Let's get a snapshot. Let's get a picture of how this game went. All right. So I said at the top, the rushing game and the defense were on point. Well, here you go. 242 rushing yards, 100 passing yards for 342 total. For Alcorn State, 71 total with 40 rushing and 31 passing yards. Vandy had 18 first downs to Alcorn State 6, and the defense got 2 takeaways while the offense had 0 giveaways. So this game was, for a lot of reasons, this game was really, really good. And what I'm thinking here, and the rushing game was on point. Okay. Here's my takeaways. Okay. Here are my 5 takeaways. So you can kind of read through these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit. Because I think when you look at this rushing game, there's a couple things within all of these categories that are going to affect it. So the rushing game was on point, okay, and I am really, really excited for the future of the Diego Pavia, Cedric Alexander, AJ Newberry rushing trio. I think those 3, especially if they want to go like 20 personnel with Newberry and Alexander in the game at the same time, I'm pretty sure you're going to see that at some point throughout the course of the season. Diego Pavia, really, really good rushing threat. And I think as the season goes on, you're going to see this thing develop with Nate Johnson. He had a long touchdown. He had 2 carries for 34 yards. He had 2 carries for, I'm going to get the exact yardage on him, but he had 2 carries and scored a really long, explosive touchdown for himself. And so I'm really excited about just kind of where this team is going offensively. And I think when Clark Lee hired Tim Beck and Jerry Kill, I think they wanted an identity. Okay. And that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I'm seeing now. And in a 2-game sample size with this new staff and this new team and this new culture, what I'm seeing identity wise is offensively, they want to establish a dynamic rushing attack. And it is pretty obvious that they're going to build everything else around that. And so when you have a dynamic rushing attack, things just kind of happen, right? Passing game happens. Like the first touchdown of the night was an end around touchdown throw by Eli Stowers to Cole Spence. So the 2 tight ends linked up for a touchdown. So the special gadget plays that end up becoming big plays and momentum getters are also the result of your run game being on point. So AJ Newberry, Cedric Alexander both had similar rushing yards. Newberry did it on 3 less carries. And so you're looking at a rushing attack that I think will start to kind of shake out. Pavia is an absolute threat in the run game, and so is Nate Johnson if they can find ways to get him into the game where it's not obvious what he's about to do. So and I think that you can also tell that they're bringing him along very slowly because I think as a passer, he's still very raw. As far as understanding the concepts and things like that, I think he's still very raw. And I think the passing game overall is pretty raw, pretty new so to speak. So this rushing game is going to get better and better and better. I think as as the teams get comfortable, as the offensive linemen get comfortable with the different looks that they're going to get, and they're going to get some pretty wild looks as the season goes on, because teams are going to be like, yeah, you're not running on us. Like Alabama is going to give them some pretty wild looks. Missouri is going to give them some pretty wild looks, and then so on and so forth. So this offensive line has to get used to coming off the ball and being able to diagnose what defenses are doing. And I think they've done a pretty good job in the run game doing that thus far. So they just need to continue to develop and get reps together. Hopefully, knock on wood, stay healthy, which I don't think there was any catastrophic injuries last night. So that's good. But this offensive line is starting to kind of be physical. Like, did you ever think you would say that about a Vanderbilt team? Like this offensive line is just physical and just outbeat somebody. They've done that for 2 games now. They did that to Virginia Tech. Like, that's the reason why I think Vandy ended up winning, is because they were physical at the point of attack. Pavia was able to lead the charge down the field. And I think that's going to be important going down the stretch, because if you can establish that identity long term, the passing game will kind of take care of itself. I mean, it's important. I wish they would have worked on it a little more, but it will take care of itself as the rushing game becomes more and more intrusive, or more and more, I guess, integral, and more feeding into the identity. So the defense, man, they came to play as well. Under 100 yards, 2 takeaways. I mean, they were flying around. They were absolutely flying around. They were hitting, shooting gaps. They were being disruptive. I mean, anytime Alcorn got any sort of positive momentum, the defense just like that, just shut right down. And so this game was outstanding in that regard, because I think also when Clark Lee decided to take over, when he decided to take over as defensive coordinator, like, he wanted an identity. That was the main thing, like a team identity, which I think they're starting to kind of round into shape there. But defensively, he wanted to be disruptive and physical. I think he's accomplishing that so far. I think he went against a very talented quarterback in the first game against Virginia Tech and Kyron Jones. So you knew he was going to get some things going there on their side. So you knew that offense was going to respond. But overall, when they needed plays, they made them. And then last night against Alcorn, they were just disrupted from the start, and they couldn't get anything going. They couldn't sustain any sort of drive. They never crossed midfield. Just keep that stat in the back of your mind here. They never crossed midfield. So, this team is fun to watch, okay? And this is why it's fun to watch, because a good run game, a dynamic run game is fun. People want to see physical football, and people want to see disruptive plays on defense. They want to see the pick sixes. They want to see the interceptions. They want to see quarterback sacks. They want to see your defense getting after it. They don't want to see you sit back, read and react, and get picked apart. Because I think last year's team against Alcorn, this game would not have been 55-0. They would not have run out of fireworks. They would not have had a lot of these same things that happened last night. It would have probably been somewhere in the 30s. It probably would have been like 30-6 or something in that regard last year, because last year's team just didn't seem like they were as into it. It didn't seem like there was a lot of things that just with last year's team that they just couldn't get much going, and they just didn't have an identity. They didn't know what they wanted to do with the quarterback and all that stuff. But I'm not talking about last year's team. I only bring that up to say that there's a remarkably huge difference with the team culture this year versus last year. And they probably on paper had more talented players on last year's group than this year's group. But this year's group is proving that, hey, with this dynamic team culture and excelling at your role, whatever that role is, no matter how small it is really kind of feeding into the overall identity of this team, and really defensively allowing those guys to play free and make plays, offensively allowing those guys to play free and make plays. So this is an exciting operation. This is something that you can look forward to, man. I'm so excited, man. This team, there's something about this team that's different. Okay. And I don't know if that'll equate to 6 wins, because it's a pretty hard schedule from here on out, with the exception of Georgia State and Ball State possibly. But the SEC slate is always difficult. So you don't know how that's going to go, but this team's going to be competitive. They're going to be held to deal with, and teams are not going to like playing against this team. It's going to be, oh God, we got to play Vandy. They're going to hit us. We may beat them, but they're going to hit us. We're going to leave this game black and blue. And I think that as you develop that culture, the wins will start to take care of themselves. If you can sustain that, you can start getting recruits, which they need to lock down Nashville. I think they need to start there and work their way out. But that's a different topic for a different episode. So regardless though, man, this team is so much fun to watch. But this was, like I said, this was a total team effort. And we'll talk about kind of how everything feeds into it and how it builds the excitement for the fans. We'll talk about that next. All right, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Man, 5 Hour Energy, they fix tired fast. And whether you have a long list to do for work or a list of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot and you can check everything off your list. So if you're like me, you always have a large list of projects for the home. When you get your supplies for the project, when you get everything ready, do not forget the most essential supply, which is a 5 Hour Energy shot. So with zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so you should try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, it's delivered right to your door, so you can customize it. If you want to be a mix and matcher, if you want to get all of one or half and half, whatever the case may be, it's there for you. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off of your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. So go to 5hourenergy.com today. That's the number 5hourenergy.com today. All right, welcome back. College football, man. This season is going to be wacky, and it's not too late to catch up on all the action before it gets even more wacky. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, you can get it all from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? At this point, it's up in the air. What teams will cause chaos? There's going to be a lot of that. So everything you need to know all in one place. So be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you, everydayers, for making all this possible. All the great notes, all the great comments on these videos and the podcast. Everything is going really, really well. I'm excited, and I think this team is making it so that we can be excited. And one of the takeaways. And number 4 could really kind of be number 1. I just kind of listed these out. I didn't order them any particular way, but this was a total team effort, man. And this is something that Vanderbilt has been desperately needing. Okay, especially after last year when team was kind of one of those words that it wasn't really a team. They were just kind of a team because they all wore the same jerseys, but they weren't really a team. And, I think Clark Lee lost control of that last year. But, after a lot of soul searching and a lot of moves, I think he's found the right recipe, honestly. And I think that this team was very electric last night. And none other than the fact that the scoreboard, and you can check my tweet on this, and everybody was buzzing about this. The scoreboard said, "Hey, we're sorry. We ran out of fireworks." And that, to me, says everything you need to know. Like, hey, nobody was ready for this resurgence, right? Not even the fireworks people are like, they're not going to score 55. They're not going to score 55 points. We got plenty of fireworks. They're not going to score all these points. They don't ever score all these points. And they did. 7 Commodores, to be exact, got in on the action. It just like, it seemed like, hey, you're going to outdo me. Okay, I'm going to get one. Okay, no, I'm going to get one. No, I'm going to get one. And so they just, all of a sudden, it just kind of snowballed. And next thing you know, it's 55-0. And, 7 Commodores have scored touchdowns. And it's pretty exciting to see. And, you had Nate Johnson score a 56-yard touchdown. He had 2 carries for 69 yards. You had AJ Newberry, 6 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown. I said he had 9 earlier. correction. He had 6. All right, Cedric Alexander, 12 carries. He scored 1. Diego Pavia scored a rushing touchdown and maybe invented a new celebration, the Commodore Leap or the Vandy Vault, whatever you want to kind of call it. We can kind of name that if Diego Pavia is going to make a habit of scoring touchdowns over there. Then you had Cole Spence chip in for 1, and then you had Taco Wright defensively have a pick 6, and then Martell Height had a punt return for a touchdown. So lots of people getting in on the action, and that's fun to see because you have all 3 phases chipping in to the final total. Right? CJ Taylor was like maybe 1 broken tackle away from taking his to the house. Like there's several opportunities where you 1 inch here, 1 inch there, and next thing you know, boom, you're in the end zone, right? And this game could have been in the 70s. But this thing was so much fun to watch. I mean, this team was so excited. The crowd responded well, which I'll get more into why that's important down the road. But this team is really, really fun to watch. And the fact that all 3 phases are kind of talking to each other, like complimenting each other. Like the offense is playing good, complimentary ball control, clock control offense. Defense is disruptive and getting the ball back for them. Special teams is creating good field position with not only good punt returns, good kickoff returns, but also good punts. Jesse Mirko had a 69-yarder last night that pinned Alcorn State deep. On one series, you had the kickoff coverage was really good because they got a lot of reps at that apparently, and the punt return was on point too. There were several good returns, including one great one by Martell Height. So you should do yourself a favor. This will be a lot of fun for you to watch. But go watch the full highlight. Go watch the SEC Now rendition of it. People are so excited about Vanderbilt right now, and this is a lot of fun. I think we should ride this wave while we have it, because we haven't had this much excitement since James Franklin left. And he brought a lot of excitement because he was an aggressive personality and he kind of made things happen within the athletic department and within the football team. So that was fun. That was good to see. Like, hey, Vandy needs to realize what potential that they have. And I think fans are starting to kind of realize that Vandy could be a really good program if they dedicated the resources to it. And I think maybe the administration could possibly see it. Like if they go from 2-10 to a bowl game this year, I think that'll go a long way into having this administration go, oh, so we can be good at athletics and academics. Like it doesn't have to be an or, it can be an and. You can be good at this and that. There's other teams that have proved that you can do that. Stanford proved for a minute that you could do that. They've kind of fallen off by the wayside, but I think that has more to do with, some of the turmoil that of the state that they live in, and I think they got crushed by COVID. But otherwise, they've been a pretty solid force in athletics, not just football. Duke has been elite in basketball, so they proved that you can do it. They did it in basketball, but they proved that, hey, we can have an elite sport that is nationally known if you get the right coach and you put the right resources behind it. The fans will support it. And so this is, because Duke hadn't always been a powerhouse. They weren't a powerhouse until a few years into Mike Krzyzewski's career, and they almost fired him. So it goes to show you that you can be an academic power and a good athletic school. I think Vanderbilt is going a long way in showing that. I don't think that they're there yet because they just haven't had enough time. But they've shown flashes of, hey, we can actually be really good if you get the right people and right resources behind it. And I think that right now they do. So if they ride this wave, if they make a bowl game, that'll be huge for this team. But if they continue, like I said, look at number 4 here. If they continue to do stuff like this, where it's a total team effort and everybody's chipping in, they'll have no choice. They'll have no choice but to just say, hey, this team's special, man. Like the offense has been really dynamic. There's a lot of guys involved, and I think the receivers are going to get more involved as we go. Tristan Brown made a really nice one-handed catch. They didn't throw for many yards, but there's some guys that made some plays. Quincy Skinner is starting to become a true number 1 receiver. He got open. He had some impact, but they didn't throw the ball a whole lot anyway. So I think if you look at his stats, you'll be like, no, he wasn't. But really, he kind of was relative to what you may believe. So this is again, total team effort is really what you want to strive for, what you want to look for in this whole thing. So I'm really excited about the direction of this team. Again, special teams getting involved. I mean, they're doing their part. Defense is being disruptive. They're limiting first downs. They're limiting ball movement, and they're creating good field position and more possessions for the offense to kind of get things going. Last year's group couldn't do that. Last year's group didn't have the ball enough. They couldn't do enough with the ball when they had it. It just time of possession was off, and there was just a lot of things that when you looked at it, when you analyzed it, it was bad. And so I think they've improved a lot of that. And I think a lot of it also is improved through strength and conditioning. I think your mindset is better, right? And that kind of goes into that total team effort, right? Because during training in January and February, like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know because I wasn't there and I didn't see the specific activities, but what strikes me based on what I'm seeing is that you had a lot of adversity being heaped on this team, and they had to get out of it as a team. It wasn't offense versus defense. Some days it probably was, but it wasn't, these segmented things. It was, okay, well, we need to figure out how we can get ourselves out of this mess and come together and really accomplish these goals. And that comes through the training programs that Coach Steiner has in place. And that's been a really, really good hire for Vandy. Jerry Kill, I think, has had some really innovative ideas as far as practice goes and creating competition, creating competitive atmosphere so you can build those skills, right? You saw that a lot in spring practice where they went one-on-ones a lot. They did a lot of competition periods. Training camp had a lot of 11-on-11 periods. And some of that was due to the fact that they had a quarterback competition and they needed those periods. But I think ultimately those will stay no matter what. And you'll see guys competing because that's what you got to do. If you're going to build depth, like, you got to compete in practice because there's not going to be a ton of game reps for these guys. You got to create those in practice. So I think just given the way that they've organized everything has really kind of feeded into that total team effort. 7 people found the end zone. That's evidence that, hey, this thing is starting to work. So next week it'll need to be probably a lot of the same. So man, this is great. Total team effort here, man. Especially on defense, especially on special teams. This is truly an amazing team that's continuing to they're kind of building. So, but the crowd, man, they're starting to notice. Fans are starting to notice. You're going to see a change. We'll talk about that change next. All right, this episode is brought to you by Ibotta. So are you taking that dream vacation this summer, but you're dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. So Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. So earn hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards, or whatever. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. So you can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores or Lowe's or Macy's, Sephora, Dick's, Best Buy, whatever. Shop at those places. It's time you joined over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All right, welcome back. We are wrapping up the show here on the Locked On Vandy podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you make Locked On SEC your second listen of the day. So, Chris Gordy does a great job there. We're going to do another SEC. I think we do an SEC roundup each and every week, so that'll be a lot of fun. But one of the things, man, that that I'm taking away. Last thing I'll say before I get into the crowd, man, the pass game's important. It still needs work, and I think it'll develop as the rushing game gets stronger and allows opportunities for that. I just think right now they're trying to establish an identity, and they're trying to establish a comfort level within this offense for Diego Pavia so that he can kind of get a feel for who's around him and things like that. But that'll develop as we go. But one of the things a thing that stood out to me, and if I could add a sixth thing, I would say that the crowd was amazing last night. I think that, Clark Lee made a plea to the fans and said, hey, man, we're going to need your support. We can win with you. You can really help us. And I've been saying that all along. Like, the fans can really affect the atmosphere and make things better for this team. I think I think people get wrapped up in, creating an atmosphere is like, oh, let's make it hostile for the opposing team, which Vanderbilt Stadium, I don't think is big enough to really make it hostile for the opposing fans or for the opposing team. But it is a case of, if you pack the stands, these guys get a jolt of energy from that. And you could tell last night that they did, because Vanderbilt packed the stadium. And not that there was going to be a whole lot of Alcorn State fans that showed up, but usually in these type of games, nobody shows up, right? It's one of those, hey, come on down to the park, we'll let you in for free because we need bodies in the stands. Last night was not that case, man. It wasn't a full house, but I think there was a lot of people there, a lot more people there than I expected for an Alcorn State game. So that was good to see. The crowd responded. I think the win against Virginia Tech really kind of re-energized a lot of people, and I'm excited about that, because this atmosphere could be really good. Because usually when you come to Vanderbilt, it's a weird atmosphere. Vanderbilt's never the home team in big games. The crowd was on point, and I think it's going to make it a true home field advantage, and in different ways than Kyle Field is a home field advantage for Texas A&M or Tiger Stadium is for LSU or Sanford is for Georgia. I think it's going to be a different feel on that, but it will be home field advantage for Vanderbilt. And so the crowd, great job. You can affect this game. You know it. I know it. So let's make that happen. But that's all I got for you today. It's the Locked On Vandy podcast. If you like what you hear, make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Anchor down and behave yourself.